Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSE Squared Podcast.
Hey everybody, Mark and Steve on the PBSE Podcast. This is episode 279. And you'll see here, I'm going to talk about this in a second, but this title, do you really want intimate connection or not? Let me tell you why this is so significant for me. In decades and decades of deep addiction, I remember crying out. Sometimes I would cry out to my higher power. Sometimes I would cry out to my wife. I'd cry out to close friends. I want to change. I'm desperate to do this or that or the other, right? And and it wasn't that I was insincere. You know, that's the thing. I wasn't just putting on a show or putting on an act. I really wanted to change. I really wanted to do something different and get something different than what I had been getting. And yet, I was, for decades, was never able to make the transition from voicing all of that to actually acting on it. That bridge from the voice, you know, and the desires and the cries and pleas for something different, I just couldn't get a bridge to the actual daily consistent taking action. And I stayed stuck for a really long time. And we have a submission from a partner who's really crying out about this very thing. So let me read her submission real quick, and we're going to jump into this. So she says, my husband and I have been married for about 15 years. Before we got engaged, I made it clear I wanted a marriage free from pornography with honest and transparent communication about any struggles from both of us. He said that was what he wanted. There's that said thing again. There have been many discovery days, big and small, throughout our whole marriage. Every one of those was me discovering his covering stuff with lies, and followed up with very beautifully spoken promises by him, as well as shifting the blame onto me for, quote, always making a big deal out of everything, or, quote, nothing's ever good enough, right, etc. Our last discovery day was just over a year ago, and I was done. She has that in all caps. I put my foot down and began rewriting the lies I had believed about myself. That led to lots of research, trickle truth, some healing as well. We are at a point where some of the time we are able to communicate well and enjoy a few moments together, but most of the time is spent doing our version of an in-home separation. We're both seeing therapists, and he's in a really good group. I'm understanding the why to his acting out and the lying over the years. But one thing I just cannot understand is how much he avoids connection and intimacy while saying that is exactly what he deeply needs. This goes back to the beginning of our marriage. I always asked to watch movies together, to pray or do devotionals together, to go out and try new fun things, or some pursue interests or date nights. Yet he almost always avoided these things without outright rejecting them, somehow making me feel like he wanted to, but he just never did for 15 years. Now, though recovery is still happening, now though in recovery, right? He's in recovery. This is all still happening. For example, I'll ask for a scheduled time to briefly talk during an in-home separation, and he will end up on the phone because a group member called and they needed to talk. Or he will ask me what he can do to help provide safety in a specific area of our relationship, and I'll tell him what I feel would help. And he will just end up avoiding it with so many things that seem legitimate. I've been asking for him to schedule a date night for 6 months, and something always comes up or he forgets. He is struggling with entering into sexual fantasy and says one of the reasons that he does that is because he needs connection with me, and he is habitually trying to meet that need in unhealthy ways. But then he avoids connection with me in the first place. He says it's because he's afraid of rejection and afraid of not being good enough. But everything he is afraid of has already happened to me and to our relationship. I realize this addiction is an intimacy disorder at its core, but come on. He acts like he doesn't even realize what he's doing while he's doing it. It's like he's trying to pull me as close as he can with one arm while holding me away with the other. I don't know what to do, and I don't know how long I can keep offering connection.
Yeah, it's a good submission because it's like a really well, how would I say it? Like like a really thorough vocalization of a common issue.
It's
right?
way common. This is
that we
so
hear.
common. Yes.
This is probably a more extreme version of it, but we see tendrils of this all the time, right?
All the time.
And she's right. It does feel very bizarre.
Mm.
And in some ways it is, and part of it has to do with a lot of things, right? And she does talk about, porn and sex addiction being an intimacy disorder, which she is correct. We say that on here frequently.
Yeah.
And so we need to talk about what does that mean? And there are kind of, I think, well, I guess I'll just give my initial thoughts on this component, because we're, here at PBSE, here at the D2C, in our D2C program, we're all about connection, obviously, and intimacy and dialogue. And this is one of those questions where I think it's very difficult to really understand, or for someone to explain what's going on here unless they've really been there, because Mark and I can really relate to this.
Oh yeah.
First of all, I think there's a question of a couple of things going on. And we don't even have this in our notes, but it's coming to mind for me, and it actually hits on a bullet point further down that we're going to look at. But there is definitely a lack of connection going on here, not just with her. There's a real lack of connection with this guy's with himself.
Yes.
Okay. Possibly on multiple levels. Being an addict is a complicated business. That's kind of an interesting way to put it, but it's true. And one of the things that we struggle with is we are caught in a never-ending dichotomy of, just like anyone, we say all the time on this program, we're all wired for connection. But addicts at the same time struggle with a tremendous difficulty of either knowing how to or feeling comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Right? We need it. And deep down, we do crave it, because, again, we all require it biologically and emotionally. Connection is not something. Disconnection from others is barring very rare genetic instances that are very rare. Is we're all wired for it on a biological level. It's a condition of survival. Right, to the human condition, people thrive better in groups. And so evolution, if you want to look at it that way, or God building, or however you want to look at it, right, we all are wired for that. But addicts learn through a series of events, again, either because of lack of modeling, or maybe it's trauma or whatever, that either connection is unsafe, or they don't learn how to do it, or it comes with a lot of different consequences, or, right, a lot of things can be behind that. But that's the dichotomy. I want and desperately need something that I am terrified of.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And she describes her confusion, right? She says he's declaring that he needs intimate connection, and then he forgets, something comes up. And it always seems so legitimate. And I don't know this guy, obviously, but I remember how I desperately needed the various kinds of intimate human connection, and yet I had fears. I felt unworthy. I couldn't measure up. Someone would reject me. It wouldn't go well. And so I would try to avoid all those things by forgetting, making excuses, having something else come up. And I was aware that I was doing all those, quote, legitimate methods to not have to put myself out there. Right. And she says, they always seem legitimate, what he comes up with as to why this doesn't work out. That really resonates with me. That there's kind of an intention and a calculation to it, even though he may not even realize he's doing that. But her confusion is, why would someone claiming to be so desperate for connection end up avoiding it? And then there's a really key phrase in her submission. He says, I'm afraid of rejection and not being good enough. I mean, I applaud him if he's gotten to the place where he realizes that that's at the core of what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
But very much a part of this. Like you said, I desperately need it, but I'm terrified of it. So what do? I go seek means of some semblance of connection without all the risk, without all the fear, without all the inconveniences, without all the effort. And now we find ourselves in porn and sex addiction.
Well, and some of you listening may think, well, Steve started this off by saying there's a lack of connection with self. What does that refer to? Well, it ties in with what both Mark and I are saying, but kind of to bring it back to that as well. What are this guy's genuine priorities? And so much of this ties again in with the addict mentality. Mark and I have worked with thousands of men over the years, and women, as well as addicts. And one common thread binds them all together. To one degree or another, they are all living in a state of emotional survival.
Yeah, emotional survival.
And for many addicts that we work with, and we know this very well ourselves, many of them have been doing that for so long. Many addicts do find themselves doing that for so long that they have either forgotten if they've ever felt at all what it's like to thrive rather than to survive. And so again, we have this underlying need, but that underlying need is being overridden by what? In our case, Mark and I have talked about this on the podcast before, the overlying need or the overlying fear of rejection.
Yes.
Or being seen for who we truly are, which that is where it ties in with connecting with self. Because we addicts, even though we need connection, we, in many ways, we talked about this on Dare to Connect in a different regard this morning, we generally have a really difficult time even accepting, much less loving the self. And the more we try to escape the self, the less in tune we are with what we're really wanting, what we're really needing, as well as, and we're also equally bad at prioritizing.
Yeah.
Right? We don't do priorities very well. Our authenticity, think about the mechanism behind addiction. We have this authentic side that says what? I want to be sober. I want to be connected. I want to be all these things. I want to stand in the light, for lack of a better term. But then what do? Our conditioning, our fear, the way we've lived up to this point in time does what? It pulls us back into the dark. And so there's constantly this like wanting to live between these two worlds. Right. And that does bring up a bullet point that, again, is a little bit further down the line, but that we ought to talk about. As for every addict out there who is listening, and we hope that many of you are, this is a different take on something we've said on the podcast before. When it comes to connection, there isn't a door number 3. And what we mean by that is if you're going to, when it comes to pursuing connection or intimacy, there is a certain physics to the laws that govern intimacy, just like there are physics in the physical world, right? When I am transparent and open, when I share, when I allow myself to be seen, and another person sees me, the depth to which that happens on a basic level is the recipe for connection. But we are constantly trying to find a way to discover the benefits of connection without the inherent risks.
Yeah, without
right?
the risk, without it being uncomfortable, awkward.
The burdens, the responsibilities,
yep, all the
that
work
come with
that's
connection.
Involved. Mm-hmm.
Herein, guys, if you think about it on an emotional level, is one of the reasons why, from an emotional perspective, pornography, for example, is so alluring. Because it offers, on the face of it, exactly what we just talked about. Look, all the perks, all the emotional dessert of a connection. Sexual whatever, love and connection and closeness without any of the baggage. I don't have to be rejected. I don't have to look at myself. I don't have to be accountable. I don't have to follow up. I don't have to, right? The list just goes on and on. So all of these quote unquote perks with quote unquote none of the quote unquote negatives, and you have this unsustainable fallacy that many of us have used as a substitute. So in many ways, this is why we talk so often on this program about the actual acting out, whether it's with porn, whether it's with affair partners, whether it's other forms of infidelity, or whatever it is, in so many ways is more the symptom and less the problem.
Yeah. And she says he admits that he keeps slipping back into sexual fantasy. And the reason is because he needs connection with her, and he's habitually trying to meet that need in unhealthy ways.
And he has not yet come to a place of acceptance and the needed willingness to recognize, again, the door number 3 concept that we just talked about. There is a price to be paid with connection.
Yes.
The degree to which I can be accepted by another is the degree to which I allow them to see me. The degree to which I receive another is the degree, or can receive another, is the degree to which I allow myself to see them. Those are both really scary concepts for addicts.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate, that's the balance. And there is an inverse, irrevocable, unchangeable, again, emotional law of physics tied to that. There's an inverse relationship that you cannot escape. And so this guy, and so among other things, sorry, I'll just say one more thing. Yeah. Among other things, this guy has, there are a few things that need to happen. And the first is there needs to be a real examination. And then we have some questions we can talk about later here. If you want to go into that, or I can talk about it later. But there needs to be a real examination and kind of a come to Jesus moment, for lack of a better term, pardon the pun, where you really get real with yourself and you say, look, what am I really wanting? And is my behavior and my conduct reflective of that? The first is that actual honesty piece. Am I really being honest with myself and with my partner? Because another potential cause of this is I do want connection, but maybe I'm not ready or prepared or able or whatever to do it on that level. Mm. And to some degree, that's something that everyone has issues with. There are weeks where on the weekend, I want nothing more than to be with my wife and my new daughter. There are other times where on the weekend, I want nothing more than to be with my wife and new daughter as long as I can go fishing for a few hours because I need some away time.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a lack of, and I would definitely say whatever else is going on, there's definitely a lack of authenticity going on for this guy. So whatever the reason is, whether it's fear of recrimination from her or whatever it is, if he's going, because Mark and I have used the excuses, just like Mark said, we live in a world where you can fill your world with seemingly really important, but less important things than what you authentically are really looking for.
Yeah.
And we all make time for the things that are really a priority. So that's one thing we can talk about in a minute here.
Hey, everybody. PBSE Podcast hosts Mark and Steve here with a special message about our revolutionary online recovery program for addict spouses and couples called Dare to Connect. Multiple times every week, we get messages from subscribers in the program. They're people just like you. They're trying to heal from the devastation of sex and porn addiction and betrayal trauma. And here's a few of our most recent submissions. Here's one from an addict in recovery. It says, D2C has principles that everyone should utilize regardless of their circumstances. It doesn't matter your coping mechanisms. It matters that you want to work towards genuine connection with your partner.
That's awesome. Another testimony from an addict continues on. My wife is just starting out in training as a licensed therapist. Dare to Connect has been far more useful to her than her degree.
Wow.
The way Mark and Steve apply what they've learned is always so redemptive. D2C has opened doors for my relationship that I thought would be shut forever. Mark and Steve are an incredible resource of information on the subject of sex addiction and betrayal trauma. We could not do this journey without their help.
Here's one from a partner who's been with us for nearly a year. I want you both to know that it is because of you guys and D2C that I'm able to be in the place that I am today. I will always be grateful to you both for your feedback and prompt replies to my questions. I can't even come close to putting it into words how valuable my time spent with y'all this past year has been to my life. Thank you for everything you taught me about betrayal trauma and boundaries and thinking errors and loving myself and making myself a priority and standing up for myself.
Love that. Love that submission. And then as we close out here today, guys, one more account from another addict in recovery. I wish I had a platform like this 14 years ago where I could have learned and done the hard work of recovery before I had done all this damage to myself and to my spouse. And to be candid with all of you, that's exactly why we created Dare to Connect. Mark and I found ourselves in that place. Messages like these and the others like them, they're what Dare to Connect really is all about, guys, and why Mark and I do what we do. Whether you're an addict or a partner of an addict, and no matter where you find yourself in the recovery process, Dare to Connect can take you to the next level. Don't wait another day to catapult your recovery forward. Today is your day for change. Visit us at daretoconnectnow.com to pick up your free 2-week trial of Dare to Connect today.
Well, and I like your questions. I had some really brave and I would say really actually authentically loving colleagues and counselors years ago when I was coming from the same place as this guy, and they confronted me, the ones that really cared about me. They said, "Mark, what do you actually want? Like, we hear you pleading and crying and saying, I want to connect. I want to be intimate. I want all these things. We hear you saying that, but it doesn't manifest in your actions on a regular, consistent basis. So you have to step back and go, what do I really want?"
Yes.
Because real desire, it's real when it is coupled with what? Action, consistent doing. And that wasn't happening for me. So first of all, I had to decide, what do I actually really, truly want? And then here was the question that I didn't want to hear. What will it take for you to get there? Mm-hmm. Not big, flashy racehorse out of the gate, passion, excitement for, 2 minutes. But what will it take for you to be consistent day in and day out to get what you're telling us you really, really want?
Yeah.
And that was a hard thing for me to face. And in looking at and having that whole conversation, here's the other thing that was really hard to face. And you talk about igniting my shame, igniting my sense of unworthiness, worthlessness, not measuring up. They said, "Mark, are you ready to face and own your tendency to avoid hard things? Are you ready to face and own that you have risk aversion, that you often seek the easy way to attempt to get to the deep connection needs that you say you have?" That look in the mirror was really difficult. In fact, at one point when I was doing it, it plunged me right back into my deep addiction. It was so painful to look at that stuff that I just threw up my arms and said, I'm out of here.
I don't want to do this.
Fortunately, I came back, but that's how hard it is to look at those things.
Yeah. And it should be noted, guys, because I know this sounds like some tough talk. It should be noted, again, we get it. And the issues behind this risk aversion, like Mark calls it, or the fears or the hesitations or the whatever, we understand that there are real reasons behind that.
They come from some legitimate places, right?
Yes, it does. And it's not about, and I hope nobody hears us in terms of we're just telling you we'll just do it. We're not. We never do that on this program. But here is where a lot of guys find kind of that excuse is we'll play victim and say, well, they're just telling me just to do. No, we're not. We're not telling you just to do it, just like we wouldn't tell a D2C client or a client in our clinic. But if you do run up into barriers, that's where you have to be accountable and authentic around them. And then you back up and you say, okay, this week then instead of trying to connect, I'm tackling the barrier. And you start the accountability process for change around that.
Right.
But that's where a lot of us, let's just call it what it is. That's where a lot of us addicts, we tend to hide.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are all these things that are in the way, but then I never tackle those things.
Yeah. And
right?
I think too often, and we know, Steve, you and I know nothing about black or white thinking, go big or go home.
I don't do that.
We don't know anything about that.
I know what you're talking about, man.
I'm either gonna cry out with my voice that I'm desperate for connection and make one giant leap to it, which never worked out, or I'm gonna do what Steve's describing. Okay, what keeps getting in my way? Rather than trying to get to the big goal of connection and intimacy with my partner, let me look at the things that keep getting in my way. And what if I were to address each one of those? What they are, why they are, and what I can do to start moving through them, through those barriers. Right? Because where do we want to get to? Steve, you and I talk often, and these can be confusing terms. We talk about getting to the place where you are ready to lead out and lean in. Lead out and lean in.
Yes.
With regard to connection. But that is a frightening place that you cannot get to in one big giant step.
I mean, we don't want to mind read this partner, but I want to address this partner a little bit as well, because what we see time and time and time again is obviously this partner. Is she frustrated with the current circumstances? Absolutely, and understandably so. But if we were to read in a little bit, and I don't think this is off base based on our experience, is she frustrated with the current circumstance? Yes. You know what the bigger frustration, though, is? I can almost guarantee the fact that it just keeps being this way and never changing.
Yeah.
Connection and safety are like an economy. The biggest thing that matters in them is the progression or regression that's going on. Okay? A healthy economy requires some sort of progression in order to thrive. Relationships are the same way. It has so much less to do with where you are when it comes to relationship satisfaction, and so much more to do with where are you going.
Right. And what does she say at the very end of her submission to us? This is where you just hear the pain and the desperation. I don't know what to do. And what I hear by that is I tried just about everything I know. I don't know what else to do, right, in this relationship. And I don't know how long I can keep offering connection. I want everyone listening to realize that final statement of hers is actually really filled with hope. She's still making bids for connection. She hasn't cut it off. She hasn't entirely given up. She keeps making those offerings. Please connect to me. Could we have a date night? Could we go and spend time together? Can we come together and talk? She keeps making the offerings, and he keeps sidestepping them, acting like he's going to accept them, but something comes up, right? She's still putting herself out there, which says there's still hope in this relationship.
Absolutely. And again, if he can't do that this week, Mazel Tov. What is he doing then? What is he doing?
What is he doing?
How are you fighting for the relationship? If you've run across a barrier, I think that the vast majority of spouses that we run into, unless we're at like the very end stage of a critical mass, most spouses, if they heard their partner say, you know what, I can't do that this week, and they were able to accurately, authentically, and vulnerably explain why, and then answer the question, what are you doing to tackle it, along with some sort of an attached goal and plan, most spouses, far more than they even realize, would be okay with that. Okay, we're moving somewhere. Right? Because change is happening. We're doing something different.
At least he's aware of what's getting in the way, and he's told me how he's working on that.
Yes.
But what I hear, and Steve, you and I hear this so much in all the work we've done, and I was doing this in my relationship, there are these steady and eventually catastrophic withdrawals from the coupleship trust account.
Correct.
And why does that happen? Because time after time, I'm not walking my talk with my partner. Yes,
go ahead.
Yeah, I say things, I make up excuses, legitimate, quote, legitimate reasons. But there's the absence of action, even small.
Or follow through, right, of any kind.
And consistent follow through.
Yep.
I would really want to talk with this guy and say, hey, are you feeling overwhelmed by the requests for connection? Are they too big? And you find yourself, because you're so overwhelmed or intimidated or scared or whatever, that you then use all of these ways to sort of maneuver your way around them to avoid them. Have you considered maybe taking a step back and making the connection smaller, more doable, right? Just something that you can begin committing to and following through with as a partner, so that you stop making these trust account withdrawals.
Yep.
right? I'm not ready for a big full date night. It's just too scary. I have social anxiety. I think I'll fail at it. Well, how about just a little dinner at home that you go get takeout and you bring it home and you sit together for a half hour? Can you do that?
Yeah.
Can you lead out and plan it and follow through with it and make it happen? It's not all the way you want to get to, but it's something.
And if you can't, will you put in the work to figure out why not and present your wife in the next few days with a plan as to how you're going to start to tackle it
Yeah.
and actually do it?
I've discovered this is the barrier that keeps getting in the way. And here's what I'm going to do to start moving through that.
I'm scared of letting you down.
Mm.
Maybe I don't want to connect as much as I keep vocalizing, right? Or I'm really scared of it. Or I have a hesitation in these reasons, or I have, right? Whatever it is, it could be anything. The point is that we start getting real and we start getting authentic and we start actually taking steps in some direction. Because what will kill every relationship, and we say this to this coupleship with all the hope in the world that they can change it, but if this continues ad nauseum, she's not lying. She will leave.
Yeah.
She will. She should. That's a bold statement to make, but she should. I would argue that in any committed relationship, I don't care where you come from, religious-wise, whatever-wise, if you cannot, A, stand in the light with your partner, and if B, they cannot do the same with you, then why are we even here?
Mm.
Why are we here?
Yeah.
If we can't even be real and authentic with each other, then what the hell are we doing?
And I can feel where this guy's coming from. One of the things,
Sure.
I had a desire to connect. I had a desire to follow through. I had a desire. I really did. And I think this guy has a legitimate desire as well. But because of all the baggage and all the underlying issues that I hadn't addressed, and I wasn't working through progressively, with outside support and help, I figured the way to, I knew the marriage was in trouble, but I figured the way to kind of put a tourniquet on the bleeding was to say the right things. If I can just keep saying the right things, at least that's something. And maybe that'll keep this hemorrhaging to a minimum.
Yeah.
And that's often where we go awry, because what we need to come to realize is that when we have betrayed partners, one more say something and not do it, one of those is going to be the thing that finally breaks the relationship. And I got to where, with help from others, it's like, Mark, be more realistic and conservative with what you're offering so that you make certain that you follow through. Yeah. Don't say it unless you do it. And if that means you need to pull back with what you're saying and committing to, then do so. But make sure that you follow through every time.
Yeah.
I thought, no, I'll just say it and, offer big platitudes and, I'll show part of myself and say, I keep going to these outlets because I'm just too afraid, or you'll reject me. And I thought that was good enough. But what was missing was action, even in little, tiny, small increments. Right? That consistent follow through, Steve, how critical have we found that to be?
Beyond what you
gosh.
can. It's the make or break for most relationships. When couples come to see Mark or myself, we've had many lengthy conversations about this, haven't we, Mark? This idea, when couples come and see us, for example, individually, or they come to our Dare to Connect program, I had many couples over the years come in where, things are horrible, but there's a willingness.
Yes.
And there's a follow through.
Yes.
And there's a consistency. And there's a will, and there's a desire to change, and there are people who are willing to take steps, even if they're small, and consistently keep making them.
Yeah,
those relationships we have high hopes for. The couple that comes in though with a much seemingly quote unquote smaller issue, but where people are just saying this is how I am, and we're not changing, or they're not willing to get real or whatever, way less so for those couples.
Yeah. Or I keep talking about it, but I don't do anything.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which is the same as not following through, but one could actually argue it's more destructive. It would be so much healthier for you guys, and do not turn on your selective hearing brain, addicts. If you're going to choose between committing to something and not doing it, and just being outright open without doing it, the latter is exponentially more valid, because at least it holds a respect of being honest with your partner. And even if that isn't the ideal answer, if it is the real authentic answer, at least now we have a place where we can move from, right?
Yeah,
Whatever that may be.
My wife, I mean, she told me, she said, I would rather have had you just say, no, I'm not going to do that.
Correct.
Than to say you were and then not. Or what would be the more healthy approach for us as guys in recovery? I don't have the capacity, or something in me is not willing to do that, but I am willing to do this and follow through on it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do you see how this comes in increments? What is the important part? Authenticity, transparency, honesty, instead of unfulfilled promises and claims and declarations, which just are so toxic and corrosive to the relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, guys, we hope that this has been helpful. I mean, there's obviously a lot more that we could say about this. You probably sense a bit of passion
Yeah.
from us. And we'll tell you what. Well, I guess we already have covered these other points, to a good degree. There are many resources that you can go to today for help with these issues. There are few, if any, that you can go to that will give you more for less than Dare to Connect. Dare to Connect offers a program with over 25 hours of interactive live content where you get answers to questions, where topics are presented and discussed, where handouts and assignments are regularly given virtually every session, where you have a community of people, like-minded individuals who anonymously but intimately you can connect with and who get it. Led by 2 therapists in long-term successful recovery, with spouses who occasionally come on the program who are willing to give you access to more, along with probably another, conservatively 50 or 60 hours of recorded content in our D2C Vault and D2C Academy courses.
Yeah.
You will not find a better value for your recovery dollar than what we offer here. We started this program in many ways to make real recovery more accessible than simply just the $175 to $250 an hour option of individual therapy. Now, this is never going to be a replacement for therapy, but it can meet a lot of the same needs at a fraction of the cost. If you are in a place where you want to be done with this, and if you, like probably everyone on the planet, is feeling the ever-present more economic squeeze, may we lovingly but pleadingly say that there is a better way to do this than trying to reinvent the wheel. This podcast will get you somewhere. Dare to Connect, if you implement the things there right, in most, if not all the other ways, will get you there.
Yeah.
If you're willing to take the leap. Come join us at daretoconnectnow.com. Grab the 2-week free trial. Come see how we are changing the way recovery happens. We are turning the way that it happens on its head. We started this program 4 years ago, and we're working on building it for years before that. And that was far before all of the economic factors and things that are currently at play in this day and age. And you all know what I'm talking about. There is a world where you can not go broke and still break out of this awful place.
Yeah.
Let us help you do it. daretoconnectnow.com. We'd love to have you come join us.
Come and join with us.
So,
hey, thanks for being here with us. We hope this has been helpful. We will, as always, if you have questions, send them in through the PBSEpodcast.com contact form. And we have a backlog of those. We'll try to answer them as soon as we can. And again, if you want questions answered immediately, come on over to Dare to Connect.
Yep, absolutely. Have a great rest of your day, and we will catch you next week.
All right.
Bye.
Everything expressed on the PBSE podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.